You're listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies. And today, my guests are award-winning filmmakers, Andrew Jenks and executive producer Dan Goodman. And we're going to be talking about their brand new documentary entitled Billion Dollar Babies, the true story of the Cabbage Patch Kids. And for anybody who lived through the 80s, you'll know who the Cabbage Patch Kids are all about. So welcome to the show, Andrew and Dan.
Thank you
for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this was a very fascinating documentary. Who knew there were also many stories behind the Cabbage Patch Kids?
That's right. I think people will be surprised when they find that out.
I think so too, and how it started the Black Friday craze that we still live through every day after Thanksgiving, every Friday after Thanksgiving. So, Andrew, I understand you were kind of, first of all, I always want to know how projects came about. So who started this project first? Dan, did you bring it to Andrew? Andrew, did you bring it to Dan? How did this come about?
Yeah, we were just on our side thinking about toward the end of COVID, people were just sort of coming back into stores toward the tail end of the holiday season, and we thought, man, this is going to be the first time people are back in stores after COVID. They're going to go crazy over the holidays, and it kind of naturally led to us thinking about Cabbage Patch Kids and that craze. And we started looking into it and, sort of realized it was the first time that retail shopping turned violent. I mean, there were, toy fads before, but nobody was hospitalized for, going out and buying toys. And, we've known Andrew for a long time and, just sort of immediately kind of went to him and said, what do you think about this? Do you think there's an idea here? Do you feel like we're just talking to ourselves or what have you? And he loved it, and we just kind of never looked back from there.
Wow. And so it didn't take that long to make this movie then, Andrew?
To make the movie, I think it took somewhere around a year and a half. We got started, and we were filming all different interviews, doing a lot of research. And Xavier Roberts, the creator of Cabbage Patch Kids, we didn't even have him signed up to do an interview. In fact, we couldn't even find him.
Right.
So that was many months in the making.
So tell us about that, because it was hard to find Xavier Roberts, and he hadn't done an interview in 40 years or 20, a long time, right? So you didn't even have more recent footage or anything about him. So
That's
tell
right.
us a little bit about how you located him and finally convinced him to do this documentary.
Yeah. So yes, he hadn't done an interview in about 25 years, and the interview he did do was all of about 2.5 minutes. He had never done an interview where everything was kind of on the table, and so I spent many months with the team at Believe Entertainment and NBC Universal just trying to track him down, and I couldn't even find like a picture of him. I found a yearbook from his high school and was able to call a few of his classmates and try and see where they thought he was. And there was all these rumors and whispers, oh, he's in France these days, and these sorts of things. We had I had a private investigator involved to try and help. And, eventually we did get in touch with a coworker of his. She brought it to him. I think I don't want to speak for them, but I think they were a little skeptical of doing it. But he's getting older, as we all are, but he's getting older in age. We were making the documentary one way or another. That's not like a threat, but we were making it no matter what. And I think this was a chance for him to really share his side of things. And what I told both of them was, I'm not a gotcha filmmaker, and watch anything I've done in the past and let that be, something that may help you determine what to do, because I'm not someone that only plays one side or the other. And so I think that was some of the backstory there in terms of tracking him down.
And then once you tracked him down, how was he to interview? I mean, he seems in the
Oh,
film.
he was great.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
He
he
right. Yeah.
you know what, we were really fortunate because I mean they were so hospitable and so terrific. And like Andrew said, we didn't know what to expect. We are like, I don't know, maybe he's not going to want to talk about a lot of this stuff. Maybe he'll walk out of the interview if we ask him some of the tougher questions. We had no idea. We'd never met him. We didn't know anything about him. But he's just exactly, I think, how we've captured him in the film. And he's just he was really an open book. I mean, we tackled topics head on with him, and he gave his side of the story. And I think that like I said, kind of at the top of our conversation, I think people are going to be surprised at how nuanced this story is. We really did not want to make the Wikipedia, history version of this. You can read about the history. We wanted the insights and things that you haven't heard, and kind of the firsthand accounts, because only the people who were there can tell you how they felt. You can't read that in Wikipedia, and you can't know these things. And being able to get him to go through and kind of recount all those things, it was it was a special interview. And I just love the fact that, if this is any insight into his personality, he had no idea what was going on with the craze. And he tells a great story about going to a big box store. He had to pick something up, and he tried to walk in the door, and there's this line of people, and they start yelling at him to get to the back of the line. He's like, I don't, why? They're like, for Cabbage Patch Kids, what's wrong with you? Back of the line. He had no idea, so they're just yelling at him. He's like, what's going on here? So he's just, it was a great testament to kind of just his perspective on things. And it was a great story. And there's lots of that stuff that you'll find in the film.
There is. Well, let's talk about a little bit about Martha Nelson Thomas, because who knew about that? How did you uncover that story, Andrew? When you were doing this, did you know about her in advance?
No, but I did not. Absolutely no, I did not. And as we started to do some research, there was some, whispers or rumors that you could find online about Martha. And so, yes, in the 70s, she had come up with her own doll called Doll Babies. And she would sell them in areas kind of around where she was from, in Kentucky. And her and Xavier Roberts had met and had discussed about maybe doing some business. And so what I learned was there had been a lawsuit in the early 80s over this. And if you had told me during the beginning of this movie that I would be calling up, a variety of courthouses in Georgia looking for affidavits and exhibits and court transcripts and eyewitness statements, I would have said, I don't know what you're talking about. But we really did a deep dive, and I read hundreds of pages of these court cases, and really got an understanding, because there is a larger question that we kind of dive into in the film as to, what is ripping someone off and stealing something from them, and what is inspiration. And I think that's a question with a lot of artwork, and something that we delved into, and something that Xavier had never talked about publicly. And so while I think originally we were scheduled to just do a 1-hour interview with him, to his credit, it lasted several hours. And we got in the weeds on kind of everything. And so we thought that was important to cover. It was also, for me, I think, important to cover Martha's story and what she had accomplished. And I think I'd like to think we were able to do that and give her a voice that hadn't really been out there.
Yeah, you did. And so, Dan, you interviewed the children of Martha. Martha passed away.
Yeah.
What,
2013.
And so you were able to interview. How was that? How did they feel about being interviewed and talking about their mother's story?
Yeah, I think they felt it was important to get her story out there on a larger platform. The sort of the nature of Martha's art and her, I don't know, I guess the way she operated was really focusing on her work more as art and local folk art. So the idea of her having a large voice or a large platform, and it just wasn't endemic to the way that she conducted herself. So I think that both her kids, as well as, kind of the folks in her orbit, Jack, her longtime friend and lawyer, and another friend of hers, Guy Mendez. I think they felt like they just wanted to be heard. I mean, like so many of us, right? And I don't think it was, and this was important to us. I don't think it was about vengeance or gotchas or anything like that. It's just acknowledgement. It's not even about the money, right? It's just about recognizing somebody who did something. I think Xavier kind of was like that, and it would have been very easy for us to make a this one's the villain, this one's the good guy kind of a movie. But I think we took kind of great pains to make sure that we let people decide, and we really, life is messy. It's not black and white, and we really wanted to delve into the gray areas and let people make and form their own conclusions about all of it.
And you did that very well.
Thank you.
You did it because it was very balanced. I thought that Xavier, the way he spoke about it was really, quite, interesting in how he felt about it and her children. And, we had a discussion afterwards with my partner, and I said, she probably more money after the fact than before, where she didn't seem to have that business savvy of wanting to take it further, and he did.
And I think that's what makes the argument. So I don't know. So how do you know who's right, who's wrong? I mean, it's just different, right? And that's what's so interesting is, he was an incredible businessman and had an incredible. I mean, he came up with Babyland, and they had hospitals and cabbage births every hour, and I mean, it's still going on. You can go down to Cleveland, Georgia. It's a beautiful facility. It's a really nice place to spend the day. It's in a beautiful area of northern Georgia, and it's still there. They still sell the Little People dolls there. They sell Cabbage Patch Kids there. And so he just came up with this very brilliant, kind of marketing scheme, and he was the one who put the licensing deals together. So we just kind of felt like we wanted to present to viewers the same experience we went through in making the film. It was like, oh, you can't combat that. Oh, well, that's a good point, but that's this. And it's like, oh, well, that's also a good point. So it's just really hard. That's what the world is. It's just nuanced and it's complicated.
It is, but it was handled very well, as I said.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You got, you have great. Where'd you get all of this footage, of everything that went on during that time? I mean, I kind of vaguely remember it. And then you have Connie Chung, on there.
Connie's great.
Yeah, she is.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah. How did that all come about?
Yeah,
I mean, talk about the archive.
The footage was just a beast to find and swift through. These days with archival footage, if this were a movie from today or a few years back, things are certainly much better cataloged. There's keywords and searches that you can do to find what you're looking for. We're talking about the early 80s, and so it's pretty messy. It's hard to track down certain things that you're looking for, and then obviously you have to get the rights to it, and who owns the rights to that footage, since it's from 83, 84. So that was actually one of the harder parts in making this film, was just securing all of that different footage, which was important because we wanted to bring it to life. And it's funny because if Cabbage Patch had come out, let's say in the 70s, there wouldn't have been this kind of footage. It was in the early 80s where news and camcorders were able to have the presence that they did, that they could be at malls all over the country. And so they were able to capture that fervor. And so the timing in that sense really worked out, but it's definitely been a tricky balance.
I mean, there's thousands of archive. I mean, we had so much stuff that we went through. And then the Connie relationship, we co-produced this with NBC Universal Syndication Studios, and the Today Show had done one of the more like iconic stories on this, and gave Cabbage Patch Kids almost a 5-minute segment on the Today Show. And Connie's interview, was kind of one of these things that we found, and it just was, lucky that it happened to have been the Today Show and our relationships with NBC. And I mean, Connie is the best. She, the way she talks about how embarrassed she was about the interview. And my favorite thing that she says is, the fact that they gave him a 5-minute segment on Cabbage Patch Kids was like a giant ad. And if they had had a world, Middle East world leader, not even sure that they would have done 5 minutes with a world leader. So it was just, it was just great. And I think everybody obviously appreciates the pop culture moment of that Connie kind of represents. And she's amazing. She's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, she is. It was good to see her too. We haven't seen her in a long time.
Yeah.
In doing this, do you have any thoughts about how this caught fire the way it did after filming this? Andrew, why don't you answer that first, and then Dan, you can give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are several reasons. After it initially took off, which certainly we could also talk about why that happened, there quickly was a shortage of Cabbage Patch Kids. And so it's interesting because in some ways it comes down to like, Econ 101 that you learned back in the day of supply and demand. And once people realized, oh, wow, these dolls are out and they're really hard to get, I want one. I need one. And the government actually ended up fielding a false, the US government put forth a claim saying that Coleco was falsely advertising Coleco, the maker of Cabbage Patch Kids, because they were harassing children by running ads for dolls which were not available. So Cabbage Patch Kids actually had to discontinue further advertising. They make this big announcement that they'll no longer be doing commercials. And of course, what did that do? That just created even more of a craze. And so I think that actually played a big role, the fact that there was a shortage, and that created just this kind of mania that we really ended up seeing.
Yeah, I also think we spend a lot of time kind of talking about just the overall societal conditions and what was happening. It was really interesting just how, the parents of these kids were parents who grew up, as kids of parents coming out of like the Great Depression, and they didn't have things. And then as they were coming out, of the late 70s into kind of an economic boom in the early 80s, there's kind of this desire to give to your kids things that you didn't have or that you couldn't have. And when you combine that with the technology that Coleco really smartly was able to harness to create a mass market customized product with different hair and skin tones and eye color and dimples, and it's all of these things together between wanting to do for your kids, having the right economic conditions, and creating something that really resonated with kids in a way that just hadn't before, kind of created this perfect storm. And we spent a lot of time talking about all of those things that sort of just lined up perfectly.
Right. It's just fascinating. How did you find the couple that
The Prosies?
That just blew
They're great.
away.
Joe and Pat.
All right. Both of you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Know a little bit more.
Yeah. So when I was researching online, and I thought, we had to find real fans and lovers of Cabbage Patch Kids. And there was a museum of Cabbage Patch Kids that existed. And it was by this one couple that had it for many years. It was very popular. And so I tracked them down, and they were just such experts on the topic. And so they agreed to do an interview. The museum is no longer. They had since moved on. But yeah, they were something else. They reveal in the film, which their own kids did not know, although now they do, that they actually their caskets are going to be a little bit bigger for after they pass, when they pass, because they want room for their favorite Cabbage Patch Kids to go with them. So they were amazing. They were lovely people, and we were really great to be able to interview them for the film.
Oh, they were great. They were really great, and they added so much to it. You know, about
They've got great flair. They're just that, and they brought their kids, because nobody calls them dolls, they're babies or kids. As a lot of people did. They brought a lot of people, everybody brought their kids to the interviews, and it's just great. They sat down and just, I mean, it wasn't even, we didn't ask them to do it. They just sat down with their Cabbage Patch Kids on their laps and just, carried on like all, normal. But they're lovely people. They're great. I mean, and think about, I mean, a museum with 6,000 different Cabbage Patch Kids they had at one time. I mean, they had the largest collection. And this massive 6,000 square foot warehouse that they had on display for this museum. I mean, they were all in, as you would say.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I can't imagine what that collection is worth nowadays.
Yeah. Well, they sold a lot of it. They sold most of it. I think they've kept about, what did they say, 491 kids that they have in their bedroom. Yeah. And then a couple others like scattered throughout the house. But the rest of them they've since parted ways with. They've sold the collection.
I wonder what their children think about all of this.
Yeah. I think they think the kids think they're nuts. But they don't care. They're just great. Yeah.
It would have been good to interview the children.
Yeah. Yeah, right. We should have. Yeah.
To see, what how do you feel about mom and dad? You compete with those babies.
It's part of their charm. It's part of their charm.
Well, Andrew, you said you did this in a year and a half. I find that phenomenal because I do a lot of interviews, and a lot of documentaries take years and years and years to put together. Yeah. The fact that you were, and you had to be a detective to try to get Xavier Roberts to interview him. The fact that you were able to put this together in a year and a half, what do you attribute that to? I mean, because that is unbelievable to put together a documentary so quickly. And it's a well-made documentary. It's a really well-made documentary.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice of you. Just we were going on all cylinders, working weekends, editing while we were still filming, and so there was just a lot of moving parts at once. And luckily the NBC Universal Syndication Studios were up for financing the film even before Xavier Roberts said he would do an interview. And I think a lot of places may not have been open to taking that kind of risk. They always want like a perfectly packaged documentary with every element in place. And so we were just doing a lot of things at once, and we just had a very dedicated team to really making it happen.
It's great for fabulous that's it was the most difficult part of putting together this wonderful documentary.
I think the sheer amount of moving parts that like Andrew said, we're dealing with all at the same time. I mean, Andrew's was relentless in pursuing Xavier and some of the other folks. And so, while he was going down that road, we were pulling archives, we were hunting down other interviews, we were trying to put the storyline together, we were negotiating with, Neil Patrick Harris and finding Connie. And I mean, it's just, but it's also the fun of making it because, we're all, I guess, a little bit nuts to be in this business to begin with. So there's a thrill in the chaos of it all, because out of it comes somehow a cohesive story that we're excited about. And I think because of all these moving pieces, it's a film and it's a story that I think most people won't expect coming out of Cabbage Patch Kids, in that it's got a lot more heart and it's got a lot more insight and a lot more commentary about what we've become as a society, and some really interesting new elements of the origins of this beloved brand that nobody's ever heard before, because nobody's ever talked about it at this depth. So I think we're hoping anyway that people really enjoy it and be surprised about the depth of the topic to discuss.
Well, anybody who grew up in the 80s or
Yeah.
children in the 80s, can this movie be seen, Dan?
Yes. CabbagePatchFilm.com. It's got the trailer. It's got the list of theaters. You can buy tickets and all that good stuff.
Good, good. But it will be in the theaters.
Yes, it'll be in theaters starting Black Friday.
Perfect.
Appropriately.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Well, it's a great documentary. Everybody, I mean, even if you didn't know about Cabbage Patch, it's a great story. It's a well done film and just enjoyable. You can take your kids; it'll be fun for them to see it too. So
we hope so.
Yeah, wish you both of you much success with
Thank you.
$1 Million Babies, the true story behind the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.